Well, before we get started, I would love to bring us into a little group coherence. Where intention goes, our energy flows, and there's no time in this world. So I want to move into the timelessness of our being. So let us close our eyes and let's just put all of your vantage point into the center of your brain and just look left, look right, and go on this little elevator down to your throat and sense the vantage point from your throat. Sense the tissues, feel the difference. And now go all the way down to the back of your heart and just sense your physical heart beating. Start sensing the gratitude for our physical heart to keep us alive. And look for a little crescent, little opening. And when you sense this opening, just look and step right into the sacred space of our hearts. From this place, just start breathing in, extending your breath and out, and start charging it with this beautiful white light. And imagine this little switcher in that area and turn it on, switch it up so you can shine so bright and sense the increase. And from this place, I would like all of us to step into a one big heart. And with the next inhale, generate love from this sacred space. And exhale, send it out through your hands into anyone that's listening or going to be listening. So we can create this beautiful construct of commonality through which we can learn. And I'd like to set the intention that we may be used as instruments of love and light in a perfect amount needed for the greatest good of the whole in a triple benefit. Fill it up with all of your love. Receive from this quantum and slowly move back out from your heart into your throat, into your brain, and just put up a smile on your face because you can. And we are going to move on.
Love it. I think every podcast episode should start that way. I'll take this recording and I'll just put it on a boombox and play it every time I record. That's beautiful. It's funny when I sit down for these conversations, sometimes, I'm rushing around, getting the gear ready, getting my iPad, and I'll feel sort of frantic. And it's quite unfortunately common that I forget to just stop and pause and just get in my body and sort of get out of the left brain,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really good reminder that we can do that at any time.
Yeah,
I think we forget that. We get so caught up in the beta brain waves and like do, go. It's like we kind of forget that we actually have agency over our energy and how we feel. So thanks for the reminder.
Absolutely.
All right, Pavel, this is what I want to start with. Allison mentioned this to me, so I don't know any part of the story other than she's like, dude, you should ask him about this one thing. So where I'd like to start is tell me about this dolphin birth that you had with your kid. That's the only thing I know. Ask him about the dolphin birth. And if it is what I think it is, I definitely want to know about it.
Well, as many of us in this alliance of people that have been done with living the way we have been in this societal norm, we look at things to always, how can we do things different, more natural? And so me and my partner, all of this came to us. It's a really crazy story. So first of all, people start seeing pixies all around us. The people that are, intuitives or friends. And they're like, we can see pixies. And we're like, what pixies? Like, what does that mean? And little by little, then little Pixie came into our space. And so we named our daughter Pixie. Now, in this process, we really were intrigued by dolphins in general. And there's some beautiful documentaries you can see on YouTube. And just like many of the things that are extremely natural and opening, it's been banned. And so we've been looking for any sorts of midwives or people that actually understand this. And so I went into a dark room last year for the fourth time. So I spent 10 days in darkness with no food. And my friend, who is also very mystical and spiritual, intuitive, she immediately told me, I have the lady for you. She's on a big island in Hawaii. And so again, it was just like one synchronicity after another. So then we walked out of the dark room. We called her, got in touch with her. And essentially, we couldn't do it Dolphin assisted, which we really wanted to. They have shut that down. And even what we did was really illegal. But of course, we're not harming dolphins. They come to us. So what we spent is the last month prior to the birth, we were in the Dolphin Bay on a big island. And so this magical memory, I'll use that as the epiphany of this, was we saw the dolphins out in the bay. And so we were waiting every day, waking up super early with my, beautiful wife that was huge at that point. And so we jumped in. She's got little snorkels and little, little paddles to be able to make it there. And so we swim out a little bit. And within few minutes, literally they're swirling around us. We had probably 25 to 30 dolphins just continuously swirling, making all the sounds. And so what happened after, when she did go into labor, and this was her first one, it was under 4-hour birth into the water. And it was literally the most mystical experience. We were chanting and humming for 3 hours together. And essentially through the hums, the midwife was like, the baby's already opening. You got to, put your panties down and start opening, the portal. And so then she came in and I was able to deliver her. The midwife didn't interject in any way in this whole process. And, now she's this magical dolphin girl here in this life.
That's so cool. So was Pixie born outside of the water though?
So she was born into a birthing tub at the house.
Okay, got it.
Because essentially where we were, the water wasn't calm enough to do it.
Got it.
So we got to swim with them. And, there's all of this research that, the consciousness can be upgraded. The birds are painless. There's all of these things. And, there used to be a birthing centers actually where you would have a space in the ocean. And that's actually one of missions of my wife is to eventually, bring this back in countries where they are not doing what they're doing here.
Yeah. That's so cool. Was that bay where the dolphins come in? Was that on the Kona side?
Yeah. So it was by the Captain Cook.
Yeah. I've been... Years ago, I was on the Big Island, and I was on the Hilo side, but we got up really early, 4 a.m. or something to get over there.
Mm-hmm.
And we swim out. And back then, it was much harder for me to get up early. And they just didn't happen to come in that day. Some days they come in, some days they don't. And it was one of those days like, God damn. Swam out there, we're kind of looking around, where are they? And they just did, they didn't feel like coming in that day. And that was my one shot. That's super cool.
Oh my gosh, some days we went to 4 beaches just to chase the dolphins. Because yes, they come in waves, but once they come, the presence, like I've never swam with the dolphins to begin with, and I just can't ever forget this moment. They're just such a creatures of love, and I love animals, but I'm not really animal person. But with the water, it was just incredible.
That's epic, man! Congratulations! It'll be so interesting to see the personality, the consciousness that your daughter evolves into after having that experience.
But what's crazy?
Super cool.
Our daughter is now 5 months old and she's been to 7 countries. She's done over 45 flights. And so from the beginning, we called in this soul that be ready, prepare to get on a ride. And, we do 150 events a year all across the world. And essentially, what's interesting, so I just got back from New Zealand and she's a little loud one. And not that she yells or screams, but loud one, she just talks, right? And so we're doing one of our system reset experiences and she keeps on talking and it's picking up on the mic. And I was a little worried, what the people will think because they're in a deep, breathing exercises. And we had several people come after that she did it right at the right time when they were struggling through something or that they remembered something that they've been wanting to, cultivate. And so it's just so incredible what these new kids are doing or being.
I mean, for a soul to choose to incarnate on this planet right now, they got to seriously mean business. I mean, this is no joke where we are right now, man. It's unbelievable. I'm 50. I'm going to be 54 this year, and so I've been, around for 5+ decades, and I'm sure the world has always been crazy in 50 years, and maybe I just wasn't aware of it to the degree that I am now. But God, talk about a polarity of experience, that we're in right now. It's so interesting. There's just so much good happening, so much positivity, so many people waking up to their own worth and to love and spirituality and the kind of work you do and so many people do. And at the same time, you have like so much darkness and deception. It's like a really interesting time to see kind of this mass awakening go on simultaneously with just, untold numbers of people that are completely unconscious and just out to lunch. It's crazy. So I'm curious to see where all these kids are going to end up, Okay, next thing I want to talk about is the darkness retreats. And you'll have to just explain that for people that don't know. I've been aware of these for a while. A few of my friends have gone off and done them. And I was talking to Allison about this today, actually, because I knew I wanted to unpack this with you. And not that many things that I'm afraid of, I mean, I've worked with psychedelics starting in 1986. I've been to some pretty far out places in terms of consciousness. But
5Gs.
The darkness retreat, dude, scares the shit out of me. I really don't. I won't say I couldn't do it. I think I wouldn't do it. I don't think I could hang. It's just, and I feel bad about that because I feel like it would be a really rich experience, but I just can't imagine myself. So that's my level of understanding of it is just like, I kind of know what it is and it scares the shit out of me. So maybe you could, share, just going back to the beginning, how you even learned of that practice and then just unpack some of the experiences you've had because it's so fascinating to me.
Yes, absolutely. So from a young age, I've been always intrigued by mysticism, spirituality. And I actually grew up with shaman when I was about 7 years old. My mother worked with Siberian shaman back in Czech Republic, where I'm from. And so I took it for granted at that time because I was like, Mom, like, what are you doing to me? I was doing yoga when I was like 12, 13 years old with my mom when it was all women, right? There was no men present at that time. And I think all of this served as a foundation into just being intrigued. And my whole life, I had this voice inside that kept on saying, there is more. This is not the life that we're meant to be living, being packaged in 4 corners and follow some societal norm, because that's what makes us so unhappy. Lack of purpose, anxieties, depression, mental issues that we're seeing today is because we have given the power out to the external. Now, I spent last 15 years traveling the world, and anybody that had some form of tool, healing, or an answer, I followed them. I went through these, experiences to learn from them. And I embarked on something I call the journey through self-transformation. Now, when I learned first about Darkroom, it was at Drumvalo Melchizedek's workshop. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
And I was 18 years old. It was in Maui. And it was called the Opening Illuminated Heart. And I think it was like day 4 where they talk about breatharians, pranic people, and darkroom. And essentially, I was so intrigued by this one thing that I picked up on it that I was like, how do I do this? Where do I sign up? I didn't have a visa at the time, so I couldn't leave the country. And then it was sold out year after year. So it took me another 5 years since then before I finally made it there. And this darkroom is not just like another darkroom where you get food, where you're there on your own. This is initiation into pranic living, into basically becoming free of the desire or need to eat food as for nutrient or calories, but actually be able to be sovereign within your regenerative biosystem that we all have. Now, when I finally went in there, I used to be entrepreneur and, I followed the societal norm, get married, make money. And I was so burned out. And essentially, I think I was about 26 years old when I finally got to go 8 years ago. And I was opening Orange Theory fitness locations at that time. And I was just like, here's my cell phone. I just need rest or reset. So I walked in there, and essentially this lady, her name is Jas Muhin. She's been Breatharian for the past 25 years. And she's been bringing this wisdom and knowledge to the Western world, because the ancient yogis, the Taoists, this has been traditional practice of qi, right? Cultivating qi within and out of our systems. And so walked in there, and it was brutal at first. You have a water, optional. Some people go dry the entire time. And she teaches you all of these meditations and tools on how to actually tap into the prana as a source. And so first thing first, the most important part is to understand how we spend time is what determines our frequency and vibration. So if we're constantly in the beta thinking mind, the chronic doers that the societal norm has become, then we're probably going to need a lot of physical food and density. Now, in there, we live something called the 8-point luscious lifestyle. And this lifestyle essentially slows down the frequency or speeds up or lightens it up. And what it does to us, it allows us to start losing the hunger. Now, throughout the 10 days, we do a prana test with muscle testing. There's a variety of tests. And maybe you start with 60-40, meaning 60% you're depending to the physical food, and then 40% you're nourished by prana. Now, everybody is nourished by prana. What prana is, it's the original source vibration that gives us life when we're born, and that goes back to the oneness when we die. So there's, that's like our soul, spirit, higher self, whatever we call it, that's always in us. But we don't use it as this regenerative system because of how we spend the time. So throughout the days, you start converting, 50-50, 80-20. And essentially, up until you hit 100 out of 100, you are losing weight and you're still fasting. So a lot of people are like, wow, so you're fasting for 10 days. No, you're eating all the time, but your inner source, that is the limitless source of creation, right? So when you convert, you actually lose the hunger. And this is freaking like, wow. Like just a reminder, I was an entrepreneur. I wasn't this spiritual person going in, but I always had an open mind and open heart to receive. And essentially, it took me about 2 weeks before I start eating again, because I lost the sense of hunger. And it was such a crazy just experience, because it's so far out, right, to what we're being told. But she started this because she was questioning, why is there still hunger? Why so many kids die every single day with this overabundance of everything? And in her meditations and in her insight, this was the tool set she received, that this is the way how we can do it.
I think I've heard her on my friend Alex Zek's podcast. Yeah, now that you think about it. Where is she from originally? Does she have an accent?
Australia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's her. And were these taking place in Thailand?
Yes. So it's in the Tao Garden.
Okay.
So it's the Mantak Chia dark room, which he holds them every year. But it's more of that masculine way of doing it. You still have a food. You still... It's much more the darkness itself that you're there for. But with her, I mean, it's an energy upgrade on every single level.
She's very cool. I really enjoyed listening to her podcast. And she was maybe the first person who is a breatharian, someone that lives on prana, that I actually believed. You know what I mean? Because people have been saying this for a long time. I mean, even, just in the health circles back when I was in the kind of raw vegan scene and stuff back in the day. And it was kind of a unicorn Bigfoot thing where someone's like, oh, this guy hasn't eaten in 20 years. And you're like, Then you'd find out they got caught backstage having, an avocado or something, So I was like, I believed it, but she was the first one I heard where I was like, I actually think she has integrity and she's being totally serious, that she just doesn't eat.
Well,
so it's that part's interesting in and of itself, but then being sequestered in darkness without any other people, without your phone, without any ways to escape yourself is just super fascinating too. So paint the picture of they might have been different, but in the first one, like, are you in a cave? Are you inside an apartment building? Are you in a house? Like, what's the actual space that you're occupying for the duration of the darkness?
Yeah, so it's essentially, it's a temple that has been completely blacked out from any light. And it's she holds a really strong field of energy. There's a lot of metaphysical things happening during that time, and there's actually about 20 of us. So it's a group of people that has a central yoga mats and place for meditations, and then you have your own room on the outside of this. You've got the first day to memorize, where things at. You've got little balloons everywhere so you don't hit your head, because some people don't harmonize as quick, and it takes a few days.
So there's a little light in the beginning, so you can kind of get your bearings, and then all the light goes out, and then you're in there with a group of people, but you have your own room. So are you bumping into people? Are you allowed to talk? Or are you giving hugs? Like, is there interaction between the people?
There is no interaction between the people.
Okay.
So she starts with about 5 meditations per day, because you do a lot of the nourishing. So just like you spend time to eat breakfast, dinner, we spend time to eat breakfast, dinner too, but into the energetic, flow. And then every day there is elimination of one meditation until the last 3 days, there is nothing. So then it's just complete silence and solitude. And I like it this way because you kind of have that buildup and you have a time to, adjust. Now, the first 4 days is always brutal.
So is she in there guiding the meditations? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're hearing a human voice and okay, got it. Because some of them, it's like you step into a cave and then they just shove food under the door a couple times a day and you're not seeing anyone, talking to anyone. There's no light, no nothing. You have a little bucket to go to the bathroom in or something, from what I understand. So this is a little different in that you're easing into those final 3 days where it's like, whoa, total sensory deprivation.
Yeah, I would say this is like the feminine way of doing it, more gentle. But also, it's not so much about, the darkness is a huge piece, but she's also a channel. So she channels, her voice changes. I mean, there's really some crazy things that happen. But usually it's interesting. So the first 4 days are really the hardest. The hardest part about darkroom or the physical hunger is not the physical part. It's the mental and emotional attachments we have to food. I have this funny story. I think it was like day 4 or 5, the first time I start seeing lamb chops everywhere. And I'm like, go away. Like, please, like, I like lamb chops, but like not that much. And so I literally couldn't figure out how to, get rid of it. And then the other part that's really interesting is, so after about day 5, your pineal gland clears out and you start seeing light everywhere. So you start producing massive doses of DMT naturally. And what's crazy is, so she literally has to teach us meditations to turn off the light, because you're like, am I inside or outside? You see orbs, you see shapes, you see geometrical shapes. It's insane. And I always do breath work. And oh my gosh, I sometimes go for like an hour, just keep on going and keep on releasing even more DMT. So I'm tripping my balls off while I'm in there having these like mystical, experiences. But that's also when I receive the most insights. And that's really what I do it for. It became my yearly reset. I'm going next 2 weeks from now. I'm going for the 5th time. And so I'm going to complete 50 days in darkness next month.
Wow. So are there, in her methodology, are there levels to it when you go back? So when you go back for your 5th one, will you have the easing into it like you have in the past with the first few days of meditation and there's other people around? It's the same thing each time you go, or do you sort of graduate to another level where you go in day 1 and just, there's nothing?
Since the first time I went, the energy has lightened up so much. So it's so much easier, and I literally barely have the hunger. So the first couple times, I'd still at times my, stomach was crouching. And so, now it's become so much easier. You also do a really, like a detox regimen before. And generally you first, go vegetarian, then you go vegan, then you go liquid. So that way your body already eases up and then your stomach shrinks down, because you don't want to have like a big meal day before, because then you're going to take the first 4 days just detoxing. So the key is you detox before you even go there, so you can go that much deeper. And I have a picture from the last one. And I literally showed this to people before and after. And it was the first time I have gained weight after 10 days of being there,
What?
then lost weight. But that's when you get it.
Wow.
You actually, you
Damn.
do this coding and perfect weight now. So you do this like system reset, back to baseline, perfect health. You know, you have all of these coding, but one of them is perfect weight now. So you speak to your cells as the hardware, right? The body from the software, the mind, and it will give you the right perfect balance that you're meant to, have.
You know, it's funny as I say that that's one thing that really scares me, but I realized when I started doing float tanks years ago, maybe the first one took me a little bit to get physically comfortable and figure out like where to put my neck and to wear earplugs or not, and just kind of getting the lay of the land. Maybe after 1, 2, 3 times, I would want to be in there for hours. Every time they would come get me out, I'm like, oh man, it's been 2 hours already. Like I want to keep going. And if it wasn't one that was designed really well, the air or the water would start getting a little chilly, and then I would lose my focus kind of on it, But maybe I would do okay in that. I mean, I do great in float tanks. Granted, that's not for 10 days; it's for a couple hours, but still, maybe I'm not as afraid of it as I think. And the way that you're doing it with this squad sounds to be a little more gentle from some of the other reports I've gotten from people where it's like they shut the door and like you ain't coming out. I mean, you can always leave, obviously, but people come out and they get blinded by the light, and it sounds like super more of a masculine approach,
So, it's so interesting because like from what I've learned in my personal journey, I used to do a lot of the patriarchal type, exercises. And anywhere I see like level 1, 2, 3, and like regiment, you have to meditate 4 hours a day to achieve enlightenment. And, all of these like have to and must do, that's not why we came here. We came here to enjoy, to be in peace, to be in love. And after we, clear out all of the things that are causing these things, that love and peace and harmony truly comes alive. And I actually became ambassador of peace under her program to be able to teach others how to tap into this freedom. And there's no levels. It's all this dance of life. And so many people come into it with, I want to stop eating. I want to be able to be free of food or whatever that intention is. And it's kind of like when people work out for the intention of not, being fat or not being ugly, right? We're already coming in with this negative intention that is going to have polarity. And so for her, and what she teaches is when the time comes, it comes. You're going to light up your diet. You naturally will, get more liquid. You naturally will stop needing 3 meals a day. And so that's kind of the progress I really see is as we light up our frequency and vibration, we're going to naturally progress into this because it's birth-giving right to be self-regenerative.
That's such an interesting concept around the food piece because, in ancient cultures, the yogis, the mystics, and so on are said to not eat, or in some cases, advocate for a vegetarian diet. And years ago, I went for quite a few years as a vegetarian, and my health fell apart. My teeth rotted out. I mean, it was just a disaster, And so when I started eating meat again, I just got so much healthier. And so now, it feels like my body operates better eating some meat. I wouldn't say that's all I eat, but that's kind of my go-to if I just want to get full and have energy. And then you look at all of the, kind of the health experts and stuff and what science says now. Of course, we have these different trends in science and they say whatever they want to say. First, fat was bad for you, then sugar was bad. It's just ridiculous. Everyone in the diet wars fighting over vegan versus carnivore and all that. It's just so boring to me at this point. It's all like white noise because I've tried so much of it and just arrived at kind of, I don't know, farm to table, paleo-ish way of eating. But what you're describing with the breatharian approach or living off prana would explain why you have very long-lived spiritual masters and mystics that paid zero attention to what they ate. A couple lentils here and there, you know what I mean? In the Himalayas, in their cave or whatever, who knows what they're eating, some ghee maybe. I mean, it's like food is just like not even part of their, awareness or something they even pay attention to. They're just like, many of those traditions would say, don't eat animals, do no harm, right? Like, don't kill animals to eat them. Maybe kind of an ethical thing, not so much from a health perspective. But I've always sort of wondered how, in the face of science, says, saturated fats are good for you. You got to eat a lot of protein. You need to eat animals basically to be healthy. And that's been my own experience. But this is reminding me kind of the precursor to that in the old times, where the number of calories you're eating and where they come from doesn't really matter, because we're living in this ether energy that you have the capacity to harness. So it's really interesting, because I've thought about, just because I love animals and I don't know, I don't want anything to have to suffer for me to be able to live, but I've just had to sort of reconcile it by, well, it's kind of either me or them, right? Like, I'm not going to sacrifice myself out of guilt because I don't want a cow to die so that I can live. And like, well, I got to live. Sorry. You know what I mean? And also just thinking about the cyclical nature of life energy. I went hunting a couple years ago here, and I shot a big wild boar, and it was a really profound and moving experience. And in that experience, one of the things I learned was, not by reading it in a book or having someone tell me, but I saw it when I killed this pig, that death is a fallacy, that there really is no such thing as death. Like, all that's happening is the transmutation of energy moving in and out of form, right? And one could see that as a justification to go kill things and not feel guilty, which it could be, but that's not what it was. It's like, I literally watched this pig die. I was like, oh, it was like a psychedelic experience. I mean, it was so fucking deep. It was extremely moving, pivotal moment in my life. And then I stopped feeling any sense of guilt about it, because I realized if I can get animal products from as most ethical sources that I can, local farms and whatnot, where I really ask them, how's the animal's life been while they're here? How did they die? The amount of suffering that they endured or not. So I've reconciled it within myself, but it would be much easier overall to just live off prana and not even have to have any of those considerations, right?
Yeah.
You're not only not arguing about who has the best diet or whatever, it's like, how about no diet? How about you just, drink some water here and there and live your life? It seems to be a much more clear path forward if one has the discipline to, adopt these practices.
I mean, ultimately, everything is about consciousness expansion, right? We are energy that then goes into the mental, physical, emotional body. And we have it all wrong in a lot of ways, right? We all go from the physical, but when things manifest into the physical, it's already too late, right? It's already that final stage. And so I think what happens here is when we get in tune back into that mind-body connection, when we open up our spiritual gifts and senses, then the ultimate, answer is your questions. And that's something that I always do. I ask, what would love do now? It's such a simple question, but you receive the right answers. Or whenever I'm doubting information, I ask, is this information limited or is it limitless? And when it's limitless, I follow it. And then let's say it's a new tool. I ask myself, does it work or does it not? And so essentially we have this intuition inside of us, every single one of us, that tends to rely on the external, science and validation. But sometimes the weirdest shit that you would never think that will work for you, you have to go through, because that's part of your growth, part of your transformation. And so that's why, there is not one size fits all and not even one time fits all. Things keep on changing. And so this is why I practice something called the process of unhooking, where I unhook from the world so that way I can hear who I am. And I basically, first hour of the day, I don't look at the cell phone and I go in. I go inward and I do breathwork, meditation. I visualize the day, the outcomes. So that way I bring my choices and consequences into my hands. Now, once a week, I take a full day off. So that's when I detox from digital, physical. I even spend the first half of the day just on my own, without kids, without wife. Because how do you know who you are if you're constantly running on somebody else's agenda, somebody else's thoughts? So it's so important that we completely strip everything back, go back into the essence, and take the time to reassess. Now, once a month, I take 4 days off. And if you've ever been to a vacation, the first 3 days, I don't know what to do with myself. It's like phone, I'm used to scrolling, right? It's like agitated. The beta is so active. And then the last couple of days of vacation, you're like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go back. I'm finally here.
Every time.
Do you know? Right.
Every time, yeah.
And so that's why I've learned the 4 days is when the insights start coming. And then once a year, I do 10 to 15 days, which for me is the dark room, but it doesn't have to be this extreme. You know, the first time I went to darkness, I changed my life 360. But the second time, minor adjustments. Third time, minor adjustments. And so now I'm back on my path of why I came here. And that gets followed by the feedback of life, because there's no better thing than constant feedback we're receiving. Whatever it's our thoughts, emotions, relationships, health, abundance, right? Everywhere that we see anything that is not of how we want to operate, that's exactly where we need to look into. But most people run away from it. It is a saying, when you focus on things that are hard first, life becomes easy. And so in this process, I start looking in to each and everything. And then I start letting it go, clearing it out, and bringing the new stuff in. And then my life just became easier and easier. And I used to learn from the gutter. You know, if it didn't hurt, if it wasn't painful, you know, all of the negative relationships, toxicity with alcohol and drugs and you know, negative business partnerships. And when I cleared that out of my life, now I'm learning from love. And I literally didn't think I was worthy of this. And, you know, now every day we sometimes tear up with my wife because we're literally living a dream that we're choosing every single day. We would not change our life. And I wish nothing but that for all of us. But if we don't take time to come back, to deconstruct, to be there for ourselves and dream, we forget to dream. You know, people are dreaming that something in the future, you know, one day I'm going to take a time off and go on a vacation. No, it's freaking today that each day we spend 1 to 4% on dreams and life shifts. We get more vital force energy. We get healthier. We get more finances. Everything just follows.
Going back to the dark room, I'm thinking about how important what is generally referred to as shadow work now is, right? Where we're consciously willing to face those things within ourselves that we spend most of the time running away from, usually unconsciously, right? Just scrolling on the phone, just being distracted. I mean, I'm working on this shit all the time. It's like, can I just be present? If I can't be present, why not? Well, there's something that's bothering me. It's an unpaid bill or an unresolved relationship, or I think the government's trying to kill me, whatever, you know, which they probably are in one way or another. But just taking the time to be with oneself and working with plant medicines and stuff obviously is a very, sped up way to do that, right? There's going to be things that you can't run from because they're just put in your lap and you're given the opportunity to face them. But I imagine in a darkroom scenario, I mean, talk about, a double meaning of a word of shadow work. When you started doing this kind of work, were you finding, fears and resentments and unhealed parts of yourself, traumas, PTSD, things like that came to the surface when you removed all of the escape mechanisms that we normally use to hide from them and run from them?
Well, that's the thing, right? When you sit in the darkness for the first time without phone, without any lights, imagine just blue lights, right? How we're constantly exposed to, and you have none of that. You get to face yourself. And the hardest part is the monkey brain. It just would not shut up. Like it just keeps on going and going and rumbling. Now, how I occupied my mind, I had to outsmart my own ego. And what I start doing, I start going back in time. So I would go either year by year or by every 7 years that I could remember. And I would start thinking and tuning into these situations, these people, these decisions that I've made. And to be honest, I had to accept myself for the asshole I used to be and for the pain I have caused to others because, I was not in there, right? In the ways that I would love to be, but I was blind. And a lot of us tend to be blind in these moments because of constant doing and no self-reflection. And so the first 3-4 days, I would go backwards and I would just surrendering. I would use different practices to release it. Sometimes you cry, sometimes you get angry. It goes all spectrum. And then the next 3 days, I would start focusing on my dreams. What do I want from life? Who am I? How do I want to show up? And this is why I literally, it was day 7. the first time that I just lost it. I start crying and crying. And I went into this beautiful place of bliss, like a complete nirvana, whatever we call it. And for the first time in my life, I've touched myself for who I am, not for what I'm being told, not for who I am not. And through this bliss, that's by the way, when Noah Aeon came about. And Noah means movement. Aeon is all or none. And it symbolizes duality. My whole life, I played ping pong, highs and lows, and good days and bad days. And I had these two voices in my head. You know, the evil voice that's like, let's do some mad blow. And then the good voice, let's drink some cold pressed juices. And essentially, I kept on, going up and down. And I was so sick of this that I wanted to come back to the center, come back into the harmony. And essentially, when I walked out of there, I rediscovered my passion, which was always music. And so this is when I started learning how to produce, how to DJ. And, now I curate a frequency-based sound on a modern beat. My purpose became, how do I give this out? 15 years of self-mastery. Now it's time for service. And that's, by the way, the two ways how we live, right? We're either in self-mastery when we're learning, listening to podcasts, books, but then our natural inclination in life is to give this away, share this with others, all of these gifts, so we can align and go higher. So that's when I started doing workshops, retreats, and immersive experiences. And then the third part was legacy. And that's, how do I make means with living in service? And after the first one, within 2 years, I lost everything. So I made millions of dollars with Orange Theory Fitness. And I completely got everything stripped away because I went into the other side. I went into the whole spiritual realms of existence where I start damning money, and I start calling it the evil. And in a lot of spiritual communities, we see that. But then I realized, hold on, I wasn't fully integrated into what I'm saying today. And it allowed me to, I had to get divorced. I lost so many companies. Every single account was frozen at that time. And I woke up one day and I literally had to fast a few days because my kids wouldn't have food to eat, from total abundance into nothing. But in that moment, I continued to stay above the cloud. I continue looking outward and knowing that I just gave all my trust into this. And what that did for me is I really saw all of the darkness. I really saw all of the shadow. And to come back to the shadow, that's really been all instigated by the dark room. But it gave me all of this new life that I'm living today.
So beautiful. I mean, I can only imagine how that kind of the sensory deprivation element of it. Maybe it was 20 years ago, I went to India and went on a spiritual pilgrimage. And part of that was a 21-day silent retreat. And the first couple days, I'm super blissed out. It was at an ashram, and it's full of other lovely people. There were, I don't know, maybe 25 other people there. Only one of whom I knew, who's the guy that I brought with me. And I felt pretty blissed out. We're doing all these meditations. There's Dharma talks. We're listening, but we just can't talk to anyone, right? And every once in a while, one of the facilitators would come and kind of check in with you. So you talk to someone every few days, right? And I was super blissed out. I felt very spiritual. I was namasteing everyone and, in the India groove. And then, I don't know, maybe 5-6 days in, I started just hating the other people there. I'd be in line waiting for my lentils and whatever, my dal, and I'd just be looking at some lady just going, fucking bitch, I'm like, what is happening? I turned like evil, and just became so irritable and angry and so kind of dismissive of other people and very irritable. Like everyone just bothered me, what they're wearing, how they talk, when they cough, if they have the sniffles, just people started to irritate the hell out of me. And it was a great lesson in, kind of, it's the opposite of spiritual bypassing, right? First few days, I'm like, oh, all love and light. We're at this beautiful ashram. And then I just start becoming an asshole. I was like, why is this place turning me into an asshole? And it's like, no, it's actually just revealing because of the sensory deprivation element. There was no TV, no books, no cell phones, and so on, right? So you're just kind of left with yourself in a journal, maybe some spiritual books, and then these Dharma talks. And I realized, some days in, I thought, oh, this is actually how I'm normally operating. I'm just kind of deluding myself to thinking I'm this really kind, loving, peaceful, diplomatic guy, which I am at my core. But underneath that, speaking of shadow work, was just all of this unresolved anger and self-anger and self-hatred and shame and all the things that I would later go on to deal with. But it was a very rude awakening, to go somewhere to become more spiritual and actually get more. It made me more primal, and like more in my ego, I guess, is one way you could say it. Or just when the mind wasn't distracted, it was just like, ha ha ha, now's my chance to take over. And I realized, wow, this is what's been motivating me my whole life. And I just didn't know it until I removed myself from all those distractions. And what was there came to the surface. It was a horrifying revelation. But, like with your experience, worth it, right? Because there were things that I could see about myself that I wouldn't have otherwise seen, and was able to eventually surrender a lot of that and get back to who I really am, So I think that kind of work, however you're doing it, whether it's a daily meditation practice or going on a really kind of intense thing like that, or a Vipassana retreat or whatever, taking time where we're able to really, truly be introspective and just to be present to whatever comes up, however uncomfortable it might be, to go through those waves of bliss. And I think I might be enlightened today. And then the next day, someone in the lunch line just bugs the shit out of you for no reason. And you see that, oh, okay, there's more work to do, How have plant medicines or psychedelics played a role, if any, in your journey?
Yeah, I've done every psychedelic that there probably is. It was a big piece of my healing for a long time. I think one of the most profound was ibogaine. But to be honest, it all went back to breath. So I used to do a lot of it, and in a lot of ways, I lost myself in the feeling of it. And I used to use psychedelics for the wrong reason, especially like psilocybin, where you use it for the sound and lights and all the cool things. But I've noticed that's a very limited way. And when I had like a really 5G dose for the first time, I was with these shamans in South Africa, and essentially, I finally got it. What this is for, and they only gave me blindfolds and no music, nothing. You're just sitting, laying down, and I thought that I'll be totally out of my mind, but the opposite was reality. I was way more present than I would be on 1 gram, and essentially, I bypassed, and it showed me completely how this construct of deception, works in this world. How we're being controlled, not by even the physical part, but really the energetic part. How these people actually master, this control through these pathways where essentially we buy into this subliminal belief system and limitations. And so since then, I've actually probably had 2 or 3 times. I've really, every time I go deep in, just a solid breath work, it gave me the energy and power to actually embody this. And so my relationship now with psychedelics is, when we get into these mystical phases, what are we actually doing with it? Because it's amazing to have this like profound experience. But if we can't embody it, if we can't bring it home and have a 3, 4, 5 outcomes and steps that we're going to take in this form, that's really been my latest kind of goal or impressions on how I spend life is, how do we cultivate that spiritual part of us, that already realized part in everyday life? Because everyday life becomes spiritual experience, right? Every interaction, every person. And so after doing all of this, it's so funny how it goes back to the base of the ha.
What was Iboga life? That's something that I haven't, Iboga life. What was that Iboga life? What was that experience or experiences like? That's one that I've not had the pleasure of working with yet myself.
Yeah, so I did it about 3 years ago. And essentially, I went into South Africa with these beautiful women that have been the gatekeepers of this medicine and all the barks and all the roots. Because what's so interesting is, just like you have so many different plants in South America, there's the same set of plants in Africa that I've never even heard of. It was really interesting. And so they have this method It's about 7 to 10 days, depending on, if you're coming off of drugs or something really serious, you got to be there longer. But essentially with Iboga, you have to do a deep cleanse before you even start. So they've actually modernized it in a lot of ways, where you do niacin flushes with infrared sauna. You do tons of cleansing and clearing of your liver, prior to it. And essentially, I think it's day 3. They give you this bark, and that just takes everything out. I mean, you throw up, it goes from every possible way, out. And essentially, that's kind of like the prep. Then the 4th or 5th day, you receive the hero dose of psilocybin. And then the 6th or 7th day, you get a day off. So then like the 7th day, you receive the actual Iboga. And every day they microdose. So that way you start being familiar with the medicine. And then on the final day, it can last up to 3 days. So it's a really strong and powerful medicine.
I think that's why I haven't done it. I'm just like, I don't know if I have the commitment for that.
Well, but it's interesting, when you've done a lot of work, you really will be able to know how to operate it, because what it does, it's very subtle. It's a lot of similarities to peyote or San Pedro in a ways, where it's not like this, brutal journey of ayahuasca. And essentially, it comes and goes in waves. And usually the first like 3, 4, up to 8 hours, depending on how much you're fighting it, you just keep on getting your subconscious mind letting go of all of the clutter. And so what they taught me is that, as things come, you keep on scrolling it out just to go through it. Because all of the shit that we've gone through, TVs and YouTubes and porn and whatever we have in our subconscious mind from movies, essentially that all comes out. So it also clears your mental, state, physical state, right? Emotional. And then you kind of have all of the spiritual insight that just keep on coming in. So it's really like you keep on getting dumps, like the secrets of universe, like the answers to this. It's like really, amazing. And for me, I really think it's my medicine in a lot of ways. And because I didn't have this brutal experience, because some people, actually, including my wife, she had a really rough times with doing it. But I'll end it with something really beautiful. My brother, was an addict. He was in cartel. He was completely lost soul, and I kept on getting dreams of him being dead. And I couldn't find him anywhere. And so I start looking for him and find him somewhere in the middle of, Barcelona, in Spain. And through some literally drug dealer that like gets me connected with him. And I get him on a call, and he's barely there, like barely comprehending. And I'm like, bro, do you want to be helped? He says, yes, I got you a ticket tonight. You're going to South Africa. And it was a very long, crazy story in between, but he ended up making it there. And within 7 days or 10 days, he has completely shifted his life. It cleared all of the pathways of addiction. And it did take another probably 6 months before he really started coming back in. And then it was a combo that he did when he really then stopped drinking. I mean, everything he couldn't even bring it in. And now he works with us. Now he's this beautiful soul, completely transformed person. So I think it's magic, right? What this
so
can
cool.
do.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people's just anecdotal experiences, specifically with addiction and that medicine. I'm like, oh, wish I would have found that, 27 years ago or whatever, when I was trying to get sober myself. I had to do it maybe the hard and slow way, But it's so interesting. From the lens of addiction and psychedelics and plant medicines, it's so interesting to me that counter to the traditional, well-proven method of sobriety, which is total abstinence from all mind-altering chemicals, via Alcoholics Anonymous, rehab, like that whole model, which is what I did. It's so interesting that throughout history now we're finding, and now in current times, like you just described, people are becoming sober from actually doing drugs. It's just like, it's totally bizarre. It's a different intention, different modes of action, right? And there's, levels of healing. I've never heard of anyone, healing their trauma by doing a lot of cocaine, for example. So it's kind of,
Mambe.
yeah. So I don't know. It's, it has a lot to do with the intentionality, right? And and the integration of it. But some substances are better for numbing out your pain, and some of them are better for facing it and healing it. So I love hearing about your brother, man. It's amazing because most people don't make it out of that life. Unfortunately, most people die or end up in prison and get themselves in all sorts of trouble. So next thing I want to cover is EMF, and something that we both have in common is a commitment to our spiritual growth and practices, but we're also really into biohacking stuff. You have a whole collection of gizmos over here that you brought to show me. One of the first guys I've ever seen, like their suitcase looks like the inside of mine. It's like a couple of pieces of clothing and then all this technology to like make travel suck less. But I've been an advocate for EMF mitigation and EMF safety for ages now. And that's something about which I'm really passionate because I think going back to the food and diet wars, I think so many people get caught up in what we're eating. And meanwhile, they're sleeping next to a Wi-Fi router, or having their cell phone on in their breast pocket all day, right next to their heart. I mean, people, maybe not in our world because people are more aware, but the general public has no idea that they're being totally fried 24/7. And I think it's just such a huge, huge issue. So how did you become aware of that as an issue? What are some of the things you've done to, to help mitigate the effects in your own life? And then we're going to talk about this thing, which is really fascinating. And I've had this here for a while, the Chi Shield, I think it's called, right? Yeah. I've posted about it and people are like, no, it's the Chi Shield. I'm like, pretty sure they pronounce it Chi. But anyway, we'll get into that. So now you're associated with this technology in some way, but how did you first become aware of it to begin with as an issue?
Yeah, so interesting enough, I never really believed in EMFs, even though like I've been in the biohacking space for probably 7, 8 years. I still had that doubt. I think like many of us, because it's invisible and there's so much split information out there. We were talking about it. If you Google are EMFs harmful, it will tell you that they're perfectly safe. And so, and yet,
God.
There's over 6,000 studies that prove that they're detrimental to our health. Now, I wouldn't know this unless I had a personal experience with this. And essentially, right when COVID started, I was in Houston. And for the first time, I lived in a really dense city, right in a downtown. And during that time is when the 5Gs got rolled out. Now, I was already very healthy, doing all of these, hacks that I'm doing today. But essentially, I started feeling mild depression, anxiety, and I couldn't sleep. I literally, like, half night, I was awake. And little by little, I looked outside of my window, and 200 feet away or 200 yards away, there is a 5G tower that was right put there. So then intuitively, I started looking into this. And, obviously in biohacking space, there's plenty of resources and people that have been sharing this for many, many years, like yourself. But I finally had a deep dive into finding my own truth. Like, what is this, EMF? And essentially, I've learned, right? There's the man-made and there's the natural EMFs like sun, which we've been exposed to ever since beginning of our times. But the man-made EMFs are not natural and it disrupts our field, our biorhythms. And so I start buying every single tool on the market because what biohackers do, they'll try to figure out how to fix something. And essentially, most of the products I found, they're harmonization devices that essentially, are beneficial, right? It takes generally 4 to 6 months for it to, adapt. And majority of the stuff are plugged into electricity, which in today's world can cause dirty electricity. And some of them have actually radiation in them. So I didn't really feel anything until I forget where I found Hagen Thiers, who's the inventor of this. But he, by the way, was the inventor of the year in European Union last year because of this groundbreaking technology called depolarization. And what it means, it renaturalizes harmful EMFs back to its natural state. So essentially, it works with the field around us, kind of like a torus field. And, anybody right at home, we've got Wi-Fi, we've got sometimes smart appliances. If you have a Tesla or any sorts of electric cars, phones, Bluetooth, it's everywhere, right? And it's only going to get worse because they're planning to have like 40,000 satellites by 2030, or I forget the exact data. But we're going to be carpeted completely. And there's no consent, right? There's no consent for 5G. There's no consent for any of this. And everything that's truth is hidden around. And also what I've learned is most studies are made on 220-pound men that have a huge skull that is only about 3% of the population. And so, yes, some of these effects are not as harmful, to people like that. But for example, kids, there's no safety limit when it comes to a child's skull. And so I finally got this product. I have a bigger version as well, the Key Home, which protects your whole house, or Key Max is a 25-story building, 328 feet in diameter. And those we work with schools, grocery stores, or corporate offices, those that are mindful and understand this. And essentially, I start being able to sleep again. My HRV, I measure the HRV. That's some of the best ways how to actually measure this. And I start having really deep dreams, which I didn't even have before I was living in Houston. And so then I was like all in. I'm like, holy shit, everybody needs to hear about this. Kind of like when I went to Wim Hof retreat. That's how I got into breathwork. And I was like, everybody has to breathe because it was so life-changing. And so same thing, I kind of get into these, things, these truths, right, that we are seeking. And so now I with my entrepreneur foundation, I've created a conscious e-commerce store. And, half of the side is EMF awareness. And, we lead with the why. So even when people don't have the means to be able to purchase the whole thing, we actually give free consultations and we educate people on what are the effects, what are the harmful, what are the ways to get out of it, how to mitigate. And we give this out for free. So we give this to the world and we have this awesome process. We literally ask, if it's apartment, if it's a house, what cars do you have? Where do you work at the office? And then we go step by step in where you spend the most time, how we can, minimize the exposure. And that's something we can, offer as well. I have created an EMF webinar that is not made by experts. It's made by me, but it comes from a place of humanity. So I came in as like with an open mind, open heart, and wanting to figure out how to fix myself. So we've created this whole education so people actually understand what's out there, all of the different issues, all of the different types, because we've got also smart meters, dirty electricity, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi's. Kind of goes as a whole complex.
That's epic. I didn't know you did that. So for those listening, we're going to put that educational platform in the show notes at lukestorey.com/Pavel, Pavel. We'll also put a link to the Key device. That's how you pronounce it, right?
Yes,
once I get it right, it's the only way I'll remember it. If you guys go to lukestorey.com/key, that's QI. I love this thing. It's super cool. I don't know, just intuitively, I don't know. I've been working with EMF products for such a long time. I have a pretty good sense from scanning a website, looking at the studies, kind of finding validity that it's not just one of these like quantum stickers you put on your phone that you don't really know if it works, probably doesn't. So that's super cool. And we'll also, you guys put in the show notes, in addition to your education, is I maybe 4 years ago or so made an EMF masterclass. Sounds like a similar kind of thing to your webinar platform. And I give it away for free. And so we'll put that in the show notes too. It's like 5.5, almost 6 hours of video content of like how you test for EMF, how you do the shielding paint, all these kind of different devices, which ones work, which ones don't, and all that. So I'm really excited to share that information with people. One thing I've noticed, and we talked about this a little before we recorded, because I've posted about this thing because I'm, as I said, like Mr. EMF, and I believe in this. So there's 25 fucking studies on the website. It's like, good, that's good enough for me. You know what I mean? So I'm behind it. But it's funny when I post about EMF stuff, and it's never people that are like actually my followers on Instagram. It's just randoms or bots that will come onto those posts and start like basically trolling and, oh, this doesn't work, it's fake. They're either like, EMF is not real, it doesn't hurt you, or this thing doesn't work, because it's, what's harmonizing mean, and, all this kind of stuff. There's like, it's weird. It's sort of like the vaccine issue or the moon landings being fake. There's just like, when you start exposing stuff, there's a certain demographic of people that kind of have Stockholm syndrome or cognitive dissonance or something, and they freak out because you're finding solutions to a very real problem. Have you experienced that? There's a certain type of demographic that's very triggered by, especially the EMF topic. And if you're coming up with solutions, like people, there's certain type of people that don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And I think anything that has truth attached to it is always being frowned upon because, and also rightfully so, right? There's so much deception and we're literally being deceived from one another, from studies to another. And, most the studies that are, publicly known, they're all industry funded. So it's kind of like with everything, you got to follow who's behind it. And yes, I mean, it's so funny and actually sad in a lot of ways because we do all of these beautiful things, with events and retreats, and we have the most magical communities around the world. And then you see this, it's like, it hurt me at first, like I took it personal. But now we're here to show what love is, and if people don't feel inclined to it, I just surrender and breathe right through it. And one thing that's my favorite thing. I don't know if you ever do this, but so a lot of people think it's just a copper. So it's really important. It is not just the copper. There's a liquid in there, and it's called a key liquid, and that's the proprietary technology that essentially takes the liquid to work within the field strength around you. And it can block it up to 90%. And that 10% is so you can use cell phones, so you can use other things, because otherwise, you would be not able to do that. Now, this liquid, if you open the bottle and you turn it upside down, it doesn't go down. It is not following the physics. And essentially, this inventor was able to put the full spectrum lighting inside of the liquid and held it in there. And it's regimentally tested inside of this $1 million chamber that puts it through massive amount of radiation. And basically, he has a way to basically charge it into this level. And so the minute you start using it, it works. And I love meditating with it because copper obviously has been known to ground forever. And so that's my way to just settle in and ground.
I wondered about that because when you turn this, probably the mic won't pick it up because it's subtle, but you can hear that there's liquid in it. I always thought, what the hell's in there? And also, after posting about this a few times, a couple people left messages on Instagram and were like, TSA wouldn't let them take it through with their carry-on because they can tell it has liquid in it. And so I think one lady messaged me. She's like, "Oh, I had to book a new flight so my husband could drive it home because they're not cheap. I mean, how much is this unit?
It's $1,000.
Yeah, $1,000. So she was like, I'm just going to get a new flight, you know what I mean? Instead of dumping in the thing where you pour your water out or whatever. And I was like, that's good to know. It's for those of you that have these or that are going to get one. I mean, like I said, I vouch for it. I think they're really, really fascinating and useful, but definitely be careful with your carry-ons.
I have a way to hack it. So what's really important,
okay.
So the liquid is just under the limits. So you can go through TSA, but you have to always take it out, just like computer, and you have to put it aside. So that way they scan it right. And so most places, if they don't have the new, there's these super radiation devices, I don't know the name, those pick up everything. So they're really detailed. And those, they always ask, what is it? And what I say, it's for my heart, because heart rate variability. Yeah. And also I just say I'm electro hypersensitive, and which is a medical term. And essentially, they always let me go.
Oh, wow.
And this is everywhere. I've traveled with this in Middle East,
Well, you
Asia.
travel a lot, so you would be a good test subject. Yeah, whenever I get messed with by TSA for my various weird shit that's in my bag, the best way to get waved through is just say it's a medical device or medication. I'll travel with Dr. John's, all his stuff you have to have on ice, his suppositories and methylene blue and all this shit. And they always flag me, and then they're like, "Sir, come here." And they go, "What's this?" I go, "Oh, that's medication or medical device." And then they just shut up. It's weird. Yeah. It's like it's the free pass through almost anything. Who's the guy that you mentioned that invented this technology? Where's he from? What's the deal with the inventor?
He's from Germany, and so he's been electro hypersensitive since young age. So 3% of the population are EHS, electro hypersensitive, and then about 35% of the population are sensitive. That's what I fall into. And then the rest of the population, we all get affected. So there's not one person that doesn't get affected, but you don't have the same response as others. And also what I've learned through the process is, it's like cigarettes. It's not going to kill you in 5 years, maybe 10 years. It's kind of like toxins. You spend enough time in it, you get overload of these EMFs, and then things start, coming up. And so for him, or for people that are sensitive, and we have people literally constantly coming to us on our website that can't even hold the phone when they are speaking to us. And then we send them the device, and we have these reviews, like for the first time, like I'm an hour on a call with someone. I've never been able to do that. And so that's the people that really, really feel this. And then, so Hagen was very similar. And his story is that he went into Finland and he went completely off grid for a while. I forget, for like a summer during his trip. And essentially, for the first time, he started feeling normal. He was like fine again, healthy, vibrant, energized. And then he came back and everything came back to him. So that's why he literally dedicated his whole life to research, to finding these products, to refining them. And so, I find it fascinating how people think it's not real, but then there's a certain amount of people that are literally cannot function. And also there's a certain amount of countries. This is also really fascinating. China requires pregnant women to wear a belt.
Like a Faraday belt?
Yes.
Wow.
Or France, have banned iPhone 12 completely. In Australia, the kids are banned from using iPads and computers because they've seen a huge influx of ADHD, anxieties, sleeplessness, and also Alzheimer's. This goes, wide into cancers and beyond.
I think with EMFs is one of those things, it's going to take 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and we're going to look back on what we've created with the infrastructure of telecommunications and smart technologies, quote, smart technologies. We're going to look back and it's going to be DDT, asbestos, smoking cigarettes is healthy and good for you. All the deception, man, all of the, sometimes deception, sometimes just stupidity, right? Of just companies wanting to make money and create conveniences, and they have consequences. But I'm kind of like, I just wish the world would catch up. We didn't have to wait that long. And maybe we are. There's people like you, and this guy inventing, great solutions. Because I love using my phone. I love having the internet. And it's amazing to live in this time of interconnectivity and access to data and all of that. But the price that we're paying for it is I'm just like, come on, people, wake up.
And I think that's the biggest thing and the biggest mission with this is that we don't want to frown upon technology, right? There's no escape from it. It's like, how do we live with it? And something interesting that Hagen also says is that the way our 5G towers are set up is wrong from the foundation. It could be 70% less harmful if they spend just a little bit of money on tweaking it. And so some of the projects that he's working on now is with cities and different officials to create these towers to be less harmful to the ecosystem. Because don't forget, it's not just us, it's animals, it's plants, it's birds that are not knowing where to go anymore because of
and bees.
Yes,
the bees, dude. Their navigation system is thrown off by all this EMF in the air. That's funny you mentioned the plants. I remember back in LA on Melrose and Crescent Heights, there's a like an AT&T kind of utility building there, and they have sometimes they'll just strap some of the cell tower repeaters on the top of the building. And then there's a tree on both sides. One of the trees is in front of the repeaters and one's not. And I used to drive by there, and the tree that's in front of the cell mast is gone, just dead. And the other one, just a few feet away, is fine because it's around the corner. It's not technically getting blasted. And I drive around with people and be like, look, I'm not crazy. Look, the tree knows, It's like trees don't have placebo or nocebo. It's like, it's bad for biological systems, So it's just... it's unfortunate. But, on the positive side, as he's discovered, there's ways that they can actually just change the technology a little bit. And I've even talked to some people. I talked to Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who's the inventor of biogeometry. And he was telling me it would be very easy to just... You could leave the entire infrastructure of telecommunications as it is in place and literally just change the frequencies that they're using, and it would be healthy.
Yes.
It would actually help
it would be productive,
you.
yes.
Like when you look at these Tartaria videos and stuff where they used to have free energy and, we had electricity. It's very obvious before we had 60 hertz wiring everywhere. So there's like there's energy in the atmosphere that we can use. And, some people say that there were, towns and castles and, bits of civilization where cathedrals, churches, and so on, where they were actually harnessing energy that could become healing, but they also would derive electricity and energy from it. So I think that it's already there. It's just a matter of the people that are monetizing those systems to be incentivized to actually create them in a way that's, not only not harmful, but maybe even good for us. It's incredible what's possible. I'm just, like I said, I'm just kind of waiting like, hello, guys, if we lose the bees, we're done. No bees means no food. And that means no people, no animals, and everything just turns into a dust bowl, I guess, so.
I think
a major
it's
issue.
Everything, right? It's again the deception of this evil that is being pushed back with love, right? And it's like whatever it's EMFs, which frequency has been used since the Hitler age, right? For manipulation, and just like our bodies are self-regenerative, so is energy, so is the ecosystem, so is Earth, and it also goes into free energy, right? That has been discovered time after time, but continuously taken down. And these people literally, they just kill them every time somebody comes to the surface with it.
I know. It's crazy. You see these videos on social of like a guy that makes a car that can run on water or hydrogen or something. And then, God bless, I'm not trying to make light of it. Yeah, they committed suicide by shooting themselves in the back 3 times. It's like,
yes.
It's probably really scary for inventors, innovators of technology to actually try and get their stuff to market. I'm interviewing this guy, George Wiseman, who made a Brown's gas machine. It's called the AquaCure. And he did something interesting when he created that device. He has never filed patents. It's all just open source, and he'll teach you how to build one yourself. You don't have to buy one from him. I was like, that's a weird business model. And I've heard his interviews, and he said, well, if you patent a technology, then it's a red flag. Like, it can basically put a target on your back. But if you invent some sort of transformative, culture shifting technology, and you don't patent it, then it's less threatening to the system. And that was kind of part of his methodology. I thought that's pretty smart. It's interesting. I mean, it's not a great way to get rich, but it's a great way to keep innovating and coming up with, life supporting technologies without getting yourself killed. It's an interesting kind of way to do it.
Blockchain route.
Yeah, exactly. Because when I first heard him say it, I was like, God, why wouldn't you patent it? I mean, you invented it. Don't you want ownership of it? It's just from a business perspective, that makes the most sense, but not if you're, not going to be able to live anymore. All right, let's see. Tell us about your me, we, be model.
Yeah. So after all of these years of travels, I came to a conclusion that this life is way more simple than we make it. And coming back to the simplicity and the most prominent ways of how we spend time is the ultimate way to, get on this journey through self-transformation. And so maybe whatever you are at home right now or driving, we can do a little self-assessment. So before I get into the me, we, be, I use this 4-step to the journey through self-transformation. And I've noticed that it can be applicable to anything. So the step 1 is waking up. You got to wake up from those things that do not work. You got to bring it up to the surface. And to give you example, you get a blood work, right? Just something really simple. It gives you a data. And maybe you are low on vitamin D, high on environmental toxins. You wake up from this, you lift it up. The second part is cleaning up, which means we have to get rid of these toxins or the things that no longer work for us so we can open up the room and space to power up. Now, power up is when we supplement vitamin D. We bring new relationships. This is when we go into the offense. And then rest up is the 4th part of this, where you do the process of unhooking that I described. You integrate, you rethink, reevaluate, and reassess those choices and consequences. Now, I like to apply this into this model. So me is the individual consciousness that each and every one of us have a power to change and affect. Now, it's made up of our physical body, physical health, which is, how you sleep, nutrition, your diet, your exercise, treating the body as a temple. Now, in this, that's where my journey started. So I used to have a really bad depression, suicidal thoughts when I was 18 years old. I had an Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue. was literally sick every 2 weeks. And that's what got me into biohacking, into Wim Hof, and into all of these tools on how to hack myself. And to not go into details, biohacking and all of your resources honestly are fantastic to get in charge of your own personal health and understanding what your body needs to lift it into its full potential. Then there is the mental body, and this is the mind. So much of my life, I thought so negatively about myself, about another. It's like toxic. Now, when I'm talking about mind, I'm talking about the egoic part of us, which, a lot of people are afraid of ego and that is bad. No, it's a great tool that we all have for survival that is limited. It pulls from the past and goes into the future. And this is why we repeat the same shit over and over again, culturally, personally, on a lot of levels. Now, 95% of the thoughts are just clutter, same thing. And essentially what I did, every time I thought something negative, I would write it out on a piece of paper, I would scratch it, and I would rewrite it. So mind is the software, body is the hardware. And essentially, every time I would think the same negative thought, I would keep on coming back to my notes until I start thinking positively. And again, it's so simple, but that's how we rewire our neurons. That's how we create new neural pathways and gratitude and all the other beautiful things. Now, your thoughts create your words, that make up your action, and that's the reality that we're co-creating. So taking charge of the mental body was a huge piece. Now, the thing that we teach, it's called the system reset experiences. And by the way, it literally is like the extension of computer. When you have a computer, it has a software, or iPhone has an apps. And then you've got the hardware, right? The phone or computer. And when you hold the button for 2 or more seconds, it resets back to baseline. Now, that's, by the way, how we've created our events, is to put that reset button on so we can reset in all of these different, elements in our life. Now, just like you have to be connected to the internet for downloading new software, we connect to the inner net. And that's that time with yourself. That's changing the brain waves into the alpha, theta, the ways that we can access these insights. So that way we are not operating out of the limited mind. Then there's emotions. And emotions are viewed as a weakness, right? To be an emotional man, there is all of these things how we're being frowned upon in this civilization. And, for me, I had to accept myself. I had to forgive myself. And essentially, this is the trauma. This is looking into the past. This is facing the people that we've hurt so we can open up that creativity and use emotions as the power fuel to creation. Now, right after that, I actually spent a month with the psychics in Brazil, and they taught me something very interesting. We've got 5 physical senses, which we all know. They get us in trouble a lot of times, the instant gratification. And then we've got 4 psychic senses, or spiritual gifts, through which we communicate with the limitless part of us, the higher self, the original source. Now, the first sense is your inner hearing. Those are the little whispers, not the lousy mind, but the whispers telling you, turn off the Netflix at night, start working out, quit drinking alcohol. Whatever that voice is, we a lot of times don't listen to it. And if we don't listen to this long enough time, that's when shit hits the fan. Maybe we get sick, car crash, because those insights are there to keep us aligned on our mission. And it's up to us to come back to them, but nobody teaches us how to utilize them. And everybody has them. Now, how do we strengthen this? We acknowledge it. So we state, thank you, I heard that. What you gonna do about that? And so for me, again, I didn't believe in this. I didn't have that feedback just yet until I start following this sense. And it became louder and louder until it merged with my egoic self. And now I use my mind as a tool, right? As booking flights, getting to places to survive here on this 3rd dimensional level. But yet I can stream this limitless part of me so I can be aligned on my path. Then you've got your inner feeling, and that comes from your solar plexus, extending into your hands. And this is the empaths of the world. When you feel it in your body. For instance, you go into a room, and if there was a fight, something doesn't feel right. It's like in your body. Now, when you feel something, thank you, I felt that. What you gonna do about that? That's again how you strengthen it. Everybody has a different strengths. So some people are more of a hearers, some are seers, which is the third sense, is your inner vision. And depending on where you are, just follow the one or two so you can start building it and strengthening it back into your true hearing, feeling, and knowing. Now, the seeing, this is the visionaries of the world. This is any game changer, that had a new invention. Maybe it came in a shower. It came from that limitless source. And, some people see colors. Other people have a direct impressions of a business plan that they're bringing into this present moment. And essentially, same thing. Thank you. I saw that. What you going to do about that? And the fourth one is your inner knowing. That is your intuition. And that is when you think you don't know. When you know, you don't think. This is how you discern it. And for instance, you knew that person was cheating on you. You knew you shouldn't have gotten to the party. It was in every bone of your body. You just had this deep knowing. And the reason why I'm using these examples is because I know everybody has these senses, but how do we interpret them? How do we know to use them? So this is a way to activate that higher self, communicate with the spiritual soul part of you, and that completes the individual consciousness. Now, that's the me, I call it. And essentially, that's where my journey started. I started looking into these most prominent things, and I start lifting them up from the darkness, the fear, the pain, the disease, into health, joy, happiness. And essentially, think about it as that's like the microcycles that we will constantly be receiving until we shine a light to them and uplift them. Now, when I start getting fed up with me centric ways of living, I start moving into that we consciousness. I start thinking, what about my neighbors? What about the environment? What about how does it affect, other people around us? And essentially, I call the collective consciousness. And I split it into relationships and into environment. The environment is the water you drink, the food that you eat, the air that you breathe, the EMFs that you get exposed to. So anything on the outside, you want to create an environment that will properly serve the inside because it all has an effect on us. The second part is relationships. And oh boy, I've hurt so many relationships in my life and I got it all wrong. And what I've learned is there's these 7 stages of relationships that we go through. Stage 1 is romance, butterflies, excitement. And by the way, this can be applied to anything. It could be a yoga studio. It could be a new LLC. There's that excitement of something new. Second phase is commitment. This is when you're girlfriend, boyfriend. This is when you sign a new LLC, buy a new membership. And then you move into the third phase, which is the broken vase. This is when you start seeing the cracks in the vase that you didn't see at the beginning. And maybe the company's underfunded. Maybe your yoga studio doesn't have showers, so you can, work out and then go to work. And maybe you start seeing things in your husband, wife, that they act like their moms or their father, or like, where's this coming from? So it's that like, oh shit, I'm not in romance anymore. The fourth stage is ordeal. And I'm going to sing it. Should I stay or should I go? And what I mean by this, it's the longest stage. This could be a 25 years of an attorney that is doing this work just because of finances, but not following their heart just yet. This could be a marriage that is just, I love you, I hate you. I love you, I hate you. And what you do wrong. And why did you do this? It's this constant, victimhood in a lot of ways, but also just pointing fingers. And the fifth stage is collapse. This is when you either make it or you break it. And essentially, most people quit. This is when you've had enough. It was so tiring, so hard. You dissolve the LLC, you quit the membership, you get divorced. Now, here's the deal. For those brave souls that are ready to see themselves for who they are, they move into the sixth stage, and that's surrender. This is when the life takes a whole new hold. This is when it stops being about you, what you're doing wrong. It's about, how do I make the changes? How did I affect you? And this is when we start taking responsibility and we go into a place of neutrality. We stop being reactive. We start becoming proactive in these choices we're making. And this is when it leads us into the seventh stage, which is true love, where is undefinable. It's just never, ever, always expanding. And this is the magical place that we all can get into with our relationships that we have. And this little framework really helped me so much to understand kind of where am I in each of these phases. And, it might not be fully accurate. You might change it however it works for you, but it's really saved my relationships in a lot of ways. So that's the we collective. Now the B is the supra collective. And this is, if we know that this universe was created 13.5 billion years ago, how did we get here? We zoom out, we're such a little dot, little drop of a dot in this vast ocean. And that is the macro cycle. So just like we have a collective karma cycles, lessons, we have individual, and we also have the supra collective. And that's, star system, that solar system that, in a deep psychedelic journey, you might start, sensing these constructs. But we are bonded to each and every one of them. And that's kind of the thing of as above, so below, or, the universal laws of what's on the inside is on the outside. And that's kind of what it took me. And when I face these things and when I start using that wake up, clean up, power up, rest up to each and every sense, it gave me a way to use and occupy my mind to give it a reward system. So that way I am working towards something in this conscious way of whatever the life feedback is bringing to me.
Beautiful. What a great model. Yeah, it's thinking about the macro and as it relates to the self, it's like the holographic nature, that there's nothing original. It's like there's just subdivisions of one whole thing, right? Like the patterns you see in nature, for example. I'm sure people have seen those pictures of, human nervous system as it matches a star constellation. It's like there's just kind of replications of everything at different scale.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting idea to contemplate, or just something in nature to observe.
Or even the amount of water in our body on Earth, like it literally everything is in a perfect equilibrium. But something really practical. So for me, when I stopped drinking alcohol, when I stopped giving, toxins into my body, all of the toxins on the inside were reflected on the outside. All of a sudden, I stopped literally having a toxic relationships. I stopped having all of these other toxicities. And I was like, wow, like what a invention, but yet universal law that if we follow, it totally makes sense.
Tell me how this relates to your journey as a parent. Like you've got Pixie, who was, meeting the dolphins right before she was born. so cool. I'm like, I have to do that now. Somebody make it legal, or at least a way to do it illegally and not get caught. What is your journey of a parent been as you've been having your awakening, and what do you see for your kids in terms of their understanding of concepts like this? I'm imagining there's ways that one could convey these truths and this kind of paradigm of living and expansion to kids in their own kid language. Is that something that you play with? If so, how do you do that?
So much. It's so interesting because, I'm at constant awe and wonder myself. And we teach so much about to keep and preserve that childlike personality inside. Because, when we quit playing, when we quit, doing the things that we did as a children, we lose that powerful sense of having fun, which is a big piece why we're here. So they're a constant reminder of that. And as hard as it is sometimes to like slow down into their moment, into their frequency, and really like make myself play, I have so much resistance sometimes, with the mind to like really like allow them to play with me. What I've learned, it's like when you just question them, when you have them keep on asking questions, when it's this like, not fear-based raising your children, it becomes this dance of you receiving more lessons than even them. And these kids in today's world, they know everything already. And, a concept that's still really far, even for me, is, unschooling. And we're going to do this with Pixie. We're not going to put her through any school system. We just want to use her as an experiment of what can be done when she directs what she wants to learn, where she wants to go. And so many adults and parents put limitations on, they have to be at school, they have to have a regimen. But yet, aren't we expanding with seeing new things? Aren't we expanding with, meeting new people and constantly being in, finding a comfort in a discomfortable situations? And so that's kind of the balance that we bring them through. We employ them. They help us with cleaning headphones and set up the space. Bella also clears people. We do a little saging before they come into our events. And so I have a 7, 9-year-old and 5-month-old. And one of my favorite things to do is at night before sleep, we talk about universe. And I teach them everything that I would teach in my classes in the same way. I tell them, what I've learned about life. So they know me, we be, they understand. Like, for example, this is a funny story. We were in a conference and my little son, he's like, "Did you put pyramid around you? There's a lot of people around us." And I'm like, "No, I forgot." And so I teach them, put pyramids, put bubble. I also teach them how to call their energy back and then send the energy back to other people that they've been with. Before sleep, we do a little sleep meditation where they have to visualize anything that happened that day back forward, or from the last minute, like let's say brushing their teeth, back into when they woke up. And, through visualization, we get into theta brainwaves. So it also helps them pass out and sleep. But they basically imagine, and I tell them to call their energy back in a form of color. So they fill up their energy body and they go backwards like this. And then until the day is over. And usually by the end of it, they're asleep. And so these are some of the, few things that we do. But I'm just in so much awe living through them now. It's like a different level of excitement, like when we go ski or when we do things that I kind of lost even the interest of doing so much. I like have this new interest of just living through them and seeing them, shine.
So beautiful. It's fascinating to me, people like you and so many people I know having kids and raising them in this way. It's going to be really interesting to see what they're like as adults. Because thinking about public school, oh my God, just thinking about my own experience, just what a nightmare it was. I just was not built for that kind of curriculum. I guess maybe some kids had a different experience. It was just hell. It was just like prison to me, and I just, thank God I only finished a few grades. I feel fortunate that I didn't try and stick it out. I just quit early on. It's one of the best decisions I've ever made is stop going to school. And actually, it's not, that learning is wrong. It's just that the things that are taught and the way in which they're taught is so, the way that it was established was really to create people that don't think, right? To create people that just follow orders and go work in a factory. I mean, we're still working with that same model of education versus what you just described, which is more of a self-led, where you're providing some guidance, but you're not looking at your kids as subordinates. You're sort of a steward for their safety, but the relationship has much more equality in it because you realize that they're a powerful soul also that just has less human experience here on earth, this time at least. So you kind of have to catch them up on, hey, don't walk in front of a car, but they have lessons for you and for us from prior lifetimes that we don't yet know, right? So I love that kind of like mutual respect approach. Obviously, you're the adult, so you have a certain level of responsibility and authority being the one to protect them. But from a spiritual perspective, I really like that idea of learning from one another, just like we do as an adults. It's like, I think the way I was raised and so many of us were raised is like as if we don't know anything yet, which totally discounts everything that we bring as a soul into this experience. I mean, so many of the kids that we interact with, I mean, I'm just like, how old are you again? They'll say things that just blow your mind. And you're like, what? How do you even know that? It's just crazy. There's some kind of stark children, or I don't know what's happening, but I'm very hopeful for parents like you and, the kids that people are bringing in. And hopefully we get to bring some in too and have that experience as well. It's really fascinating, the idea of conscious parenting and just doing things different. Homeschooling, unschooling, all of this is very exciting to me.
Fun fact, I I was so bad at school, like what you described, that I failed like twice. And when I was 17, I started my first business, my first e-commerce. And essentially, I ended up paying my friend to finish high school online for me so I can send my dad diploma. Because he was
Nice.
like, dude, you have to have something.
Yeah.
But to not misinterpret this, the entire time I was 15, 16 years old listening to Conversations with God and at Cartola. And, so I was always interested in things I want to learn. And I
Yeah.
think that's what I see that these kids are bringing, is like they know internally what they want to learn. And we all have the same thing, right? Insights. But this is a way to wipe our, creative flow out.
Yeah, it is, man. Well, I can't wait to see what you and your kids do in the world. Tell us a little bit about these events that you do, and we'll link to all of this again, you guys, at lukestorey.com/Pavel, Pavel. But you were mentioning something a little bit downstairs about these events. Sounds pretty cool. You're integrating biohacking and breath work and some plant medicines and all kinds of different things. Tell the people about that for folks that are interested in what you're doing and want to come interact with you in that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got so first we have digital courses that are all around transformation, breathwork, meditation, guided ecstatic dance from home to use dance as a meditation. And we also have an on-demand library, which we can give free access to the listener.
Oh, cool.
So they have an actual idea and can take it from home. And then we've created a whole menu board of events. So after all of these, travels and really like honing it down, I put all of these tools into this interactive, immersive learning system. So that way it's no longer like the long hours and hours of, lecturing, and then you can't really remember too much of it. My whole thing is all about embodiment. And so we do immersive experiences, which our main one is called System Reset, which is what we were discussing. And we practice something called a BDM. I come from EDM, and so it stands for breath, dance, meditation. And these are fully produced shows. I mean, we've got instrumentalists, drummers, singers, cacao ceremony. We give flowers to people. There is a consciousness hacking corner so people can also experience different products and tools. And essentially, these have been like the catalyst for people's lives. And, my reason why I have no voice, I did 7 of these in the last 3 days. I came from Miami this morning. And essentially, we're on a mission to continue going into all of these places around Earth. And we have this signature meditation at the end where we bring everybody through group coherence. They step in their heart, they hold their hands, and then we start praying for world. We start praying for Earth. And, group prayer has been proven time after time what in the quantum field it can do. And we work in these deep quantum shifts. So we alter the states through the breath and through the sound so we can face the mind, the body. And so what I described today, the me, we, be, we literally, each round of breath reflects that. So you get to look at your physical health, mental health, emotional health. You do a little self-assessment, and then we take you through the framework to know where to start. And then we give you a 30-day journey to follow with an accountability partner. So that way you integrate all of this. So we put a lot of thought into this. It's like a conscious show. It's like going into a concert, and we tour like going in a concert, 150 events a year.
So cool. That's amazing, dude. I don't know how you do. How old are you right now? Or how young
33.
are you? 33. Okay. That explains why you can travel like that. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was flying all over the planet, tons of energy, no problem. Now it's like, I don't know. I flew to California a couple of weeks ago. I was just like, oh my God, it's exhausting. It's just right there. It's not even a far trip. Well, God bless you, man. I'm glad you have the wherewithal, and maybe it's all that work you did in the dark retreats, cultivating that prana that enables you to go be of such maximum service, in so many places. That kind of schedule, I just observe that in people like you, and I'm like, oh my God, how do you do it? It's not for the faint at heart. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, man. I know we've had this one, on the books for a while, and it was well worth the wait. And I think that's it, man. What a great conversation. Great, variety of topics that we covered here. I'm so excited. I got to learn about the dolphin birth and these dark room retreats and the stuff you're doing with EMF. It's all just fascinating, great work. We need more people like you in the world. So keep having kids. Keep raising them that way. We need an army of you out there right now. I think you're just making a great contribution to the world. So
I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, so thanks for doing that. And thanks for joining me here today.
And, also on behalf of all your listeners, I want to thank you for all the work you do, because you are an educational portal that creates inspiration, that brings motivation, and it can bring results. And so it's so important because you've got some endurance, to do this. So thank you for all the work you do as well.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's a labor of love, Every time I have a podcast booked, I'm like, oh shit, I have one on the calendar. And I go, how long am I going to do this? It's been like 8 years. And I just think, I can't find a good reason to stop. So I guess I'll just keep going. It's funny. Sometimes when you start a venture, you don't really think about like an end date or what's on the other side. It's just kind of, in the beginning, I just wanted to share these conversations with people, and I never thought about, oh yeah, so I'll be doing this in 10 years. It's just weird. But I'm also very particular about the people that I book, and I have to really be excited to talk to someone in order to do it. And so I think that's why I just keep grinding and keep pumping them out every week, 2 or 3 hour,
Wow.
5 episodes a month for 8+ years or something now at this point, But then I think I'm like burned out on it. And then I sit down with you today. I'm super inspired. I'm all lit up. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to stop now. If I would have stopped yesterday, I wouldn't have met you. And wouldn't have had this great conversation that's going to hopefully inspire and help so many people. I would have missed out. So I think, well, if I quit now, I'm going to miss out on the one next week. That's probably going to be awesome too, So yeah, it's funny. I guess I'll just keep going until I can't.
Yeah. Keep on going.
Yeah. Thanks, brother. Well, I appreciate you, man. And look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.